video, we are going to look at what are called two-way tables. And two-way tables give us two different categories. And from the data, we are able to use the table to make different inferences. So let's go ahead and read the scenario. It says, Miss Johnson's class collected data on whether or not they have a curfew on school nights and whether or not they have assigned chores. The two-way table below displays this data. One category is represented by rows, and the other category is represented by columns. So let's look at this example, which is known as a two-way table. And what you're going to see is that it is really looking at two categories in two ways. For instance, one thing that we're looking at is, do students have a curfew or do they not have a curfew? So when you're reading this, you're actually going to look across, and what this is going to show us is the total. So if we're looking at a curfew, and this is Miss Johnson's class, then there are 12 students that have a curfew and chores, and there are 5 students that have a curfew and no chores, and there are a total of 17 students that have a curfew. Same thing as we look at no curfew across. It's giving us information for each of the categories, but it's saying there's a total of 13 students with no curfew. Now what you'll notice is that the same relationship can go by columns. So in this case, we're comparing chores to no chores. So in her example, we have in chores a total of 15 students with chores, and there are a total of 15 students without chores. Now, no matter which way we read a two-way table, we can see that Miss Johnson has a total of 30 students in her class. 17 plus 13 equals 30, or 15 plus 15 equals 30. But we're looking at the table in two ways. Now these 4 in the center of the table, they are the most unique ones because that tells us when we have more than one category represented. For instance, we talked about it earlier, 12 is when a student has a curfew and has chores. 3 represents a student with no curfew, but they do have chores. And so there's different ways to read it as we look. So let's answer these questions based off of this two-way table. A says, how many students have a curfew? So again, we are looking at the category for curfews, and we're going to read the table across to see that there are a total of 17 students that have a curfew. We'll do the same for B. How many students do not have a curfew or chores? So they do not have a curfew and they do not have chores. So I'm going to start with no curfew based on just the way that I read it, so no curfew, but I also have to find that they have no chores. So notice that 10 represents that intersection where they have no curfew and no chores. Now C says, how many students do have a curfew, but they do not have chores? So again, I'm starting with my curfew in my two-way table, so I know these are representative of my curfew students, but they do not have chores. So I have to go to where it is a curfew, but no chores, and I see that that is 5. Now D starts to look at percentages. So what percentage of students surveyed have chores? So remember, when we're thinking of a percentage, we're looking out of a total. Well, what are we out of total here? 30 students. So there are 30 students in Miss Johnson's class. What percentage of those students have chores? Well, remember, when we're looking at chores, that's looking really at the column of data. So when I look at chores, I see that there are 15 students out of the 30 that have chores. Well, we see that that's actually 1/2 of our class, which means that it is 50%. Let's do the same for letter E. What percentage of students surveyed do not have a curfew, but do have chores? So again, the percentage of all students is out of 30, but now we're looking for a different condition. They do not have a curfew, so no curfew, but they do have chores. No curfew, but do have chores is 3 students. So 3 out of 30, or I could see that as 1/10, which I know is 10% of my students. If you need to, we know we could actually do that division to help us with that. And part F says roughly true or false, roughly more of the students surveyed have a curfew. Well, if we look at this and do a comparison, so we have curfew or no curfew. I see that we have 17 students with a curfew and we have 13 without. So just a little bit more have it than do not have it. So we would say true in this scenario. Now this is the first part of two-way tables. We need to know how to read them. But the second part is we need to know how to write them. So we're going to look at this scenario, and using the given information, we are going to construct a two-way table. So this says Eloise surveyed the students in her cafeteria and found that found the 38 males agree with the new cafeteria rules, while 70 do not. There were 92 females surveyed, and 41 of them agree with the new cafeteria rules. Construct a two-way table summarizing the data. Well, first we have to think about what are our two categories. And we see that one of the categories has to do if they agree or disagree with these rules, right? So we're going to put agree with the cafeteria rules or disagree. That's our first category. The other category that I see in here is who was surveyed. We have males and we have females surveyed. So we have males and we have females surveyed. So we always have to think about what are the two categories we are comparing. So the agreement level and if they're male or female. So looking at this, the first thing says that they found the 38 males agree with the new cafeteria rules, while 70 do not. So it didn't tell me the total number of males, it told me some specific categories. 38 males agree. So notice there's the two categories in that scenario. So 38 males agree. I'm going to go ahead and fill that part in my table. And then it said with the new rules, well, 70 of those males do not. So 70 males do not. So 70 males disagree. Well, I have enough information now to tell me what my total number of students surveyed was. 38 plus 70 is 108. All right, let's see what else we can find from our information. There were 92 females surveyed. So stop right there. It told me a total. So I know I have to put that somewhere in my total category because there were 92 females surveyed. So I'm going to go to my category for females, and where the total is at, I'm going to write 92. And of the 41 of them, there were 92 females surveyed and 41 of them agreed. Well, there's another piece of information. Females that agree. 41 of the females agree. So I have enough information to find how many of the females disagreed because there's 92 total. If I remove the 41 that agreed, I know I have 51 students that disagree with this rule. Well, now do we have enough to complete the rest of our table? Absolutely, because we see that we know how many students agreed, so we can find a total, and we know how many students really disagreed, so we can find a total. So I'm going to go ahead and add these. So the 38 plus the 41 to find my total of 79, and my 70 plus the 51 to find my total of 121. Now check this out. This is how you know you filled out a two-way table correctly, because when I add the totals in either direction, this number better be the same. 108 plus 92 I know is 200, and 79 plus 121 I know is 200. We're done. We have constructed a two-way table.